The temporal anomaly. The basement laboratory hummed with the soft pulse of equipment that shouldn't exist yet. Dr. Ilara Chen wiped sweat from her brow as she adjusted the calibration on her quantum displacement array. A machine cobbled together from university surplus, modified consumer electronics, and components she'd designed herself. The university had cut her funding 3 years ago, calling her temporal research speculative at best, delusional at worst. Now she worked alone, surviving on her modest online teaching salary, and the stubborn belief that time wasn't the immutable force everyone thought it was. Come on, she muttered, watching energy readings climb on her Modify tablet. The machine wasn't pretty. Exposed wiring connected a central chamber to a ring of Modify electromagnets, all powered by a custom fusion battery she'd developed as a side project. It looked like something from a low-budget sci-fi film, but Ilara knew better. The mathematics were sound. The quantum principles were valid. Time was just another dimension that could be manipulated with the right application of energy and will. The lab lights flickered as the machine drew more power. On her monitors, quantum particle behavior began showing the telltale signs of temporal displacement, patterns that shouldn't be possible according to conventional physics. Ilara held her breath as the central chamber began to glow with an otherworldly blue light. "Holy shit," she whispered. "It's actually working." Her test was simple. Send a single quantum-entangled particle back in time by 10 minutes. If successful, the paired particle in her containment field would show displacement effects before she even activated the machine. Theoretical physicists had debated the possibility for decades, but no one had built a working prototype. Until now. The machine reached critical threshold. Ilara pressed the activation sequence and stepped back, protective goggles unable to fully dim the sudden flash of light that filled the basement. Then everything went wrong. Instead of the controlled temporal displacement she'd anticipated, a wave of energy surged through the lab. Equipment shorted out in cascading failures. The quantum containment field collapsed. Ilara dove behind her reinforced workbench as the central chamber imploded with a sound like reality itself tearing apart. When the chaos subsided, Ilara cautiously peered over the workbench. Where her machine had stood was now a shimmering distortion in space, a temporal anomaly that seemed to breathe with potential. "Impossible," she whispered, reaching for her scanner. The readings made no sense. The anomaly was stable, a persistent tear in space-time that defied every known law of physics. What Ilara couldn't know was that her experiment had sent ripples far beyond her basement lab, ripples that extended not just through time, but across galaxies. Aboard the Vexari monitoring vessel in high Earth orbit, alarms blared with an urgency that hadn't been triggered in centuries of observation. Commander Zextal moved with uncharacteristic haste through the curved corridors of the cloaked ship, 4 arms working in perfect coordination to access multiple command interfaces as he entered the monitoring hub. The Vexari had been observing Earth for millennia, carefully guiding human development through subtle interventions designed to prevent the species from advancing too quickly. "Report," he demanded, skin shifting from its resting blue to a concerned purple. Science Officer Niravex gestured toward the primary display with 2 of her arms, while the others manipulated controls. "Temporal anomaly detected in the North American region. Localized but powerful. It's creating cascading disruptions throughout our historical modification network." Zextal felt a chill run through his central nerve column. "That's impossible. Humans are at least a century away from temporal manipulation technology." "Evidently not," Niravex responded, bringing up detailed scans of a residential area in California. "The signature is unmistakable. A human has created a stable temporal displacement field. Small, but growing in stability." The commander's skin darkened further. "The Council must be informed immediately. This threatens the entire guiding protocol." For 10,000 years, the Vexari Collective had implemented the guiding protocol across dozens of developing species. They weren't conquerors. They considered themselves shepherds, carefully cultivating promising civilizations by subtly altering their development paths. Small interventions in history, preventing certain discoveries, guiding key individuals away from revolutionary insights, occasionally removing particular threats, all designed to ensure species developed along controllable, predictable lines. Humanity had been among their most challenging projects. The species had a frustrating tendency toward intellectual leaps and unconventional solutions that repeatedly threatened to accelerate their development beyond the Vexari timetable. Identify the human responsible, Zextal ordered. The monitoring systems quickly triangulated the anomaly's source and displayed information on the central holographic projector. Dr. Ilara Chen, quantum physicist, dismissed from academic position at California Institute of Technology for pursuing forbidden research directions. Zextal studied the human female's information, another outlier we failed to identify early enough. The historical adjustment team should have redirected her career path years ago. Her profile indicates exceptional intellectual capacity even by human standards, Niravex noted, and unusual resistance to our subtle influence techniques. The anomaly is still active, another officer reported. And it's showing signs of, wait, that's not possible. Zextal moved to the officer's station. What is it? The anomaly is establishing connection points throughout our temporal network. It's as if it's interfacing with our own technology somehow. The implication struck Zextal with immediate clarity. Lock down all temporal access points. Initiate protocol severance. But it was already too late. Ilara stared in wonder at the shimmering anomaly in her lab. Her initial fear had given way to scientific curiosity as she realized the tear wasn't expanding or releasing radiation. Instead, it seemed to be stabilizing, pulsing with mathematical precision. Then she began receiving data. Her remaining functional monitor suddenly displayed information streams she hadn't requested. Complex mathematical models, physics equations far beyond current human understanding, and something that looked suspiciously like system architecture for a vast network that spanned time itself. What the hell? She whispered, rapidly taking screenshots as the information flowed across her screens. Most of it was incomprehensible, written in symbolic language she couldn't decipher. But portions had been automatically translated into recognizable mathematical notation, enough for Ilara to begin understanding what she was seeing. Oh my God, she gasped as the realization hit her. This is a temporal manipulation network. Something has been messing with our history. The data continued flooding in, painting a picture too outlandish to believe, yet the evidence was irrefutable. An alien civilization called the Vexari had been systematically altering human history, subtly redirecting development paths, eliminating promising research directions, all to keep humanity contained and controllable. Ilara's mind raced as she processed the implications. Her groundbreaking temporal research had accidentally connected with their network, creating a bridge between her modest experiment and their vast temporal manipulation system. Her hands trembled as she began downloading everything she could. The connection wouldn't last forever, and this information was humanity's only hope. A new data stream appeared, details of specific historical interventions. Ilara's blood ran cold as she read about her own career. 3 key moments where adjustments have been made. A thesis advisor subtly redirected to discourage her most promising research. Grant funding mysteriously diverted from her proposals. Former colleagues inexplicably turning against her theories. Her academic exile hadn't been bad luck. It had been engineered. They'd been hobbling us, she whispered, anchor building as she scrolled through thousands of similar interventions throughout human history. Brilliant minds diverted from key discoveries, crucial innovations delayed by decades or centuries, all to keep humanity on the Vexari's preferred development timeline. The anomaly pulsed more urgently now, its rhythm becoming erratic. They were trying to close the connection. Ilara worked frantically, downloading as much as possible before they cut her off. In the final moments before the connection severed, one last data packet arrived. Complete technical specifications for the Vexari's temporal manipulation technology. Information that would have taken humans centuries to discover independently. The anomaly collapsed with a soft implosion of air, leaving Ilara's basement lab in darkness except for the glow of her backup systems. She sat in the dim light, staring at the treasure trove of data she'd acquired. The Vexari had made a critical mistake. In their 10,000 years of manipulating developing civilizations, they'd never encountered a species that discovered the temporal bridge accidentally. Their own system had betrayed them, automatically translating and transmitting data through the unexpected connection. Ilara took a deep breath, decision crystallizing in her mind. With trembling fingers, she began organizing the data, mind already racing with implementation plans. The Vexari had been manipulating human history for millennia, keeping humanity contained and controlled. But now she had their own tools, their own technology. She could fight back. She could undo their manipulations. She could set humanity free. Game on, Ilara whispered to the empty lab. On the Vexari vessel, chaos reigned. Emergency containment protocols had failed spectacularly. Not only had they been unable to sever the connection cleanly, but their own system had transmitted critical data through the breach. How is this possible? Zextal demanded, his skin now the deep purple of extreme distress. The human's temporal field synchronized with our network at a fundamental quantum level, Niravex explained, her movements frantic as she worked to assess the damage. The system identified it as an authorized node and initiated automatic data synchronization before security protocols could engage. What exactly did we lose? The commander asked, dreading the answer. Everything, came the whispered reply. Historical intervention records, technical specifications, operational protocols, even our species identification markers. Zextal's secondary heart nearly stopped. Are you saying a single human now has access to our entire temporal manipulation technology? Not just access, Niravex corrected, her skin paling to a sickly blue-white. The data transfer included implementation instructions automatically translated into their mathematical language. She could potentially build her own version of our system. The commander's mind raced through the implications. The guiding protocol had never faced a challenge like this. A developing species gaining access to temporal manipulation technology before they were properly prepared was exactly the scenario the protocol was designed to prevent. We must eliminate this human immediately, one of the junior officers suggested. A precisely targeted orbital strike. No, Zextal interrupted. Direct intervention of that magnitude would be detected by human monitoring systems. The protocol forbids revealing our presence so explicitly. Then what do we do? Niravex asked. Zextal stared at the image of the human female displayed on the monitor. Dr. Ilara Chen, a simple creature who had just become the greatest threat the Vexari Collective had faced in 10,000 years of guided evolution. Prepare for emergency temporal intervention, he ordered. We'll need to adjust her timeline more directly than we've ever attempted with a human subject. What they couldn't possibly know was that Ilara Chen was already preparing her countermove, and she now had the perfect weapon. Their own technology turned against them. The battle for humanity's timeline had begun. Rewriting the stars. 6 months passed in a blur of frantic work and paranoid vigilance. Ilara's modest basement lab had transformed into something that would have made her former academic colleagues question their understanding of physics. Using the stolen Vexari blueprints, she had constructed a functional temporal manipulation device, smaller than their vast network, but precisely calibrated for surgical interventions. She'd abandoned her apartment above, moving her living quarters into the reinforced lab space. The walls were lined with temporal shielding adapted from Vexari designs, rendering her invisible to their detection systems. Let them search. They wouldn't find her until she was ready to be found. Targeting sequence complete, she muttered to herself, finalizing coordinates for her first major intervention. After months of smaller tests, tiny adjustments to verify her system work, she was ready for a direct assault on the Vexari's manipulation network. The target, a pivotal moment in 1954 when the Vexari had derailed promising quantum research by Dr. Richard Feynman, According to the historical records she downloaded, they had subtly influenced him away from exploring certain mathematical models that would have advanced human understanding of quantum mechanics by decades. Ilara activated her temporal displacement field, watching as energy coalesced into a stable translucent bubble. Unlike her first accidental breakthrough, this was controlled, precise, a surgical strike at the fabric of history. "Let's see how you like plane defense for a change," she said, entering the final command sequence. The temporal bubble pulsed once, twice, then vanished with a soft popping sound. On her monitors, data streams showed the successful implementation. She'd sent a precisely calibrated information package to Feynman, insights that would circumvent the Vexari's planned intervention. Now came the wait. Historical changes didn't propagate instantly. The timeline needed time to adjust, ripples spreading outward from the point of intervention. Ilara had learned this through her smaller tests. She calculated that significant changes would take approximately 72 hours to fully manifest in the present. She settled in to wait, monitoring systems alert for any Vexari counter-response. In the central command chamber of the Vexari mothership, emergency klaxons sounded for the third time that month. The Temporal Integrity Council, hastily assembled from the collective's most senior members, gathered around the massive chronometric display. Supreme Director Krelvor, oldest of the gathered Vexari, raised all four hands for silence. His skin had settled into the deep indigo of extreme concern, a color rarely seen among the normally composed species. "Show me the breach," he commanded. The display shifted to highlight a pulsing red disruption point in Earth's mid-20th century. "Another direct intervention," reported senior analyst Tavrin. "This one targeting a crucial suppression point in human quantum physics development." "By the eternal flow," muttered Krelvor. "This human female grows bolder. First minor historical adjustments, now direct counter-interventions against our established control points." The Vexari had been in crisis mode since discovering Dr. Chen's temporal technology. Their initial attempts to locate and neutralize her had failed spectacularly. She had somehow developed temporal shielding that rendered her invisible to their sensors. Their only awareness of her activities came through the disruptions she created in their carefully managed historical timeline. "The ripple effects are already spreading," Tavrin continued, gesturing at the chronometric display where timeline distortions radiated outward from the intervention point. "If left unchecked, this change will accelerate human quantum computing development by approximately 47 years. Can we counter-adjust?" asked Council Member Zithmark. Tavrin's skin paled slightly. "We've attempted 7 counter-adjustments to her previous interventions. She's anticipated each one and established temporal lock points that resist our manipulations." The implications were clear and terrifying. This human wasn't just blindly lashing out. She was implementing a strategic campaign against their historical control network, targeting crucial intervention points with surgical precision. Each successful change accelerated human technological development beyond the Vexari's carefully managed timeline. "She's dismantling 10,000 years of careful guidance," Krelvor said, voice heavy with concern. "At this rate, humans will achieve technological parity with the collective within a century." "Perhaps it's time for direct intervention," suggested Zithmark. "Conventional forces." "Absolutely not," Krelvor interrupted. "The guiding protocol exists precisely to avoid direct conflict with developing species. We are stewards, not conquerors." "But the protocol assumed our temporal superiority," countered Tavrin. "This human has effectively neutralized that advantage." The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the council. For millennia, the Vexari had guided dozens of species through careful temporal manipulation. Never had they encountered a species that discovered and weaponized temporal technology against them. The chronometric display chimed again. Another intervention detected, this one targeting human computer science development in the 1970s. "She's accelerating her attacks," observed Zithmark. "What happens if we do nothing?" Tavrin manipulated the display controls, projecting timeline outcomes. Based on current intervention patterns, Dr. Chen will undo approximately 83% of our historical guidance within one Earth year. Human technological development will accelerate exponentially. They'll achieve interstellar capability within 50 years, temporal mastery shortly thereafter. Krelvor's skin darkened further, and then they'll discover the other species under our guidance. The unspoken fear hung in the air between them. Humanity, armed with the knowledge of how their development had been artificially suppressed for millennia, unleashed on the galaxy with advanced technology and a grudge. "We have no choice," Krelvor finally declared. "Prepare the temporal convergence chamber. I will make direct contact with Dr. Chen." The council members exchanged shocked glances, their skin rippling through colors of surprise and concern. "Direct contact violates our most sacred protocols," Zithmar reminded him. "The protocols no longer apply," Krelvor replied heavily. "This human has changed the rules of engagement. Now we must adapt or face extinction." "I'm not stepping foot on your ship until I have proof you're dealing in good faith," Ilara countered. "As a show of sincerity, I want you to restore a specific historical intervention." She transmitted the details, the sabotage career of her mentor, Dr. Sofia Hernandez, whose revolutionary work in quantum field theory had been systematically undermined by Vexari interventions. This adjustment would accelerate human quantum technology development by approximately 23 years, Krelvor noted after reviewing the data. "Consider it my condition for continuing this conversation," Ilara said firmly. The alien's projected image flickered slightly as he communicated with his colleagues. Finally, he nodded, a surprisingly human gesture. "It shall be done. The adjustment will be complete within 6 of your hours. Then we'll talk again after I verify the change," Ilara said. End transmission. The projection faded, leaving her alone in the lab once more. She took a deep breath, trying to process what had just occurred. The Vexari, architects of human history's suppression, were now offering partnership. It seemed too convenient, too easy. But perhaps that was the point. Her temporal counter-interventions had created a new reality, one where humanity could no longer be contained through subtle manipulations. The Vexari were adapting to this reality, choosing cooperation over escalation. Ilara moved to her monitoring station, watching closely for signs of the promised historical adjustment. Trust would need to be earned, and she would verify every claim before taking a single step toward cooperation. If the Vexari kept their word, humanity stood on the precipice of a new era, not just reclaiming their stolen destiny, but potentially helping to liberate dozens of other species from unseen control. And if the Vexari were lying, well, she still had their temporal technology and the knowledge to use it. One way or another, humanity's future would no longer be written by alien hands. The monitors beeped softly, showing the first ripples of a significant temporal adjustment, exactly matching the parameters she'd specify for Dr. Hernandez's restoration. Ilara smiled grimly. Perhaps this was genuine after all. In the vast cosmic game of temporal chess, she'd somehow managed to force a stalemate with a species that had been playing for millennia. Now came the most delicate game of all, forging a peace that respected humanity's potential while preventing the technological self-destruction the Vexari so feared. The temporal anomaly that had started in her basement lab 6 months ago had become something far greater. A turning point not just for humanity, but for every developing civilization under Vexari guidance. A singular human accident had rewritten the stars themselves, forever changing the relationship between species across the galaxy. Ilara Chen, once a disgraced physicist working alone in a basement, now stood as humanity's representative to a galactic power. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders as she prepared for what came next. The future, all possible futures, awaited her decision.